Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining today. We are very excited to spend the next hour discussing a topic that's top of mind for many of our lenders, which is building the Encompass Foundation for AI-driven lending. How do we maximize your Encompass investments while preparing your platform for the next wave of automation AI? This webinar focuses on practical strategies lenders can implement today using the modern Encompass capabilities. The importance being, how do we go from a human based lending to an exception based lending? My name is Sunita Nair. I will be your moderator for today's session, as well as joining the discussion as a panelist. Before we get started, some couple of quick housekeeping points. This session is being recorded. You're going to receive a copy after the webinar. We encourage you to submit your questions using the Q&A panel. We will address as many questions as possible towards the end of the session. Polls will pop up throughout the session. Please take a moment to respond. We absolutely value your feedback. I am going to kick off the session with a story. A few months ago, I was speaking with an operations leader at a mid-sized lender. She said something that stuck with me. She said, we bought Encompass to make our processes easier, but somehow every loan still feels like a scavenger hunt. I'm sure the statement resonates with some of us. Her team was jumping between emails, documents, spreadsheets, and conditions. Loan officers were chasing updates, processors were manually checking documents, and underwriters were clearing the same conditions over and over again. The platform is powerful, but the workflow around it hadn't evolved. And that's the reality many lenders are facing today. Most lenders don't actually have a technology problem from what we understood. They have a workflow orchestration problem. And that's exactly what we are going to be talking about today. How lenders can modernize Encompass using enhanced condition, task-based workflow, and eventually decide to move to Encompass on the web to reduce the manual workflow, streamlining the operation, and building a foundation that is very AI-driven. The good news is that many of the capabilities needed to modernize Encompass capabilities already exist within Encompass today. It does exist within Encompass today. So today we will walk you through how lenders can leverage enhanced conditions, task-based workflow to modernize your operations, to standardize, and ultimately create a scalable foundation for AI-driven lending. We want to reinforce the message that you can start small and scale big. You don't have to do everything on day one, but you need to get started. You need to start your journey from going to a legacy to a modern Encompass and ultimately driving the agentic lending platform that will kind of bring in all the benefits you need, both for your technology teams, the operations teams, as well as your business. So today I'm joined by two experts who work very closely with lenders on these initiatives. From ICE Mortgage, we have Kaylee, who will walk us through the modernization capabilities that's available within Encompass. And from Tavant, we have Shane, who will share his experience and examples of how lenders are implementing these features. So let's start with a quick glimpse and view into the challenges that we all face in our legacy Encompass world. Many lenders are still operating on a legacy Encompass environment, which results in heavy manual workflow, thousands and thousands of business rules, customization, which brings in the operational inefficiencies, difficulty to scale operationally, heavy reliance on customer intervention. Modernizing Encompass is no longer optional. It is essential for lenders who want to remain competitive and prepare for the next generation of lending technology. I'm sure it's how do you take your current ecosystem and Encompass from a legacy to modern to agentic is top of mind for most of you who are attending this webinar today. Operational transformation today focuses on rationalizing your configuration, standardizing your workflow, implementing some of the new capabilities that ICE rolls out every quarter, preparing the system for Encompass on the web. This shift enables lenders to move towards automation first operation, building a foundation for AI-driven lending. AI adoption in mortgage lending requires a very strong operational foundation. Without a strong operational foundation, it is very difficult today to build AI on top of a legacy framework. Modernizing Encompass enables the next wave of capabilities to create the structured data sets and workflow that is needed for AI to operate effectively. And that's the reason why modernizing your Encompass cannot wait. It has to get started like today. We've all seen the evolution of mortgage lending, right? We went from a manual LOS to an automated LOS, and now we are talking about AI enabled LOS to an agentic mortgage platform. We've seen the human driven decision go from low automation to a digital lending platform. And now we are talking about AI assisted lending to an agentic lending. So the evolution has definitely happened, and there is going to be a further evolution with everything that's going on in the market today. And we need to be prepared to get our business and our operations to that next stage of lending, which is the automated lending and an AI assisted lending. And what are the foundational pieces that is needed in order for us to get there? And that is the significance and importance of the webinar. How do we get very pragmatic in the way we structure our roadmap and our journey to take your current environments and your current platform into a vision and strategy that is scalable, that is effective, and that is efficient, right? I know all of this sounds great, but we want to really make it much more pragmatic for you so that you are able to take small chunks of work and thinking about the automation that actually moves the needle. Not all automation creates the real business value. We all know that. But there are some high impact automation that you and your team can get started and start focusing on, which is related to workflow automation. How do you standardize your task orchestration across your platform? How do you automate service ordering? How do you bring in the automation required for document classification and indexing? Condition management. How do you automate and generate the tracking of the underwriting conditions, right? One of the most important manual aspect of mortgage is conditions management. Without enhanced conditions today, conditions are manually written. Tracking happens in notes and emails. Clearing condition requires manual intervention. With enhanced condition, you can automate conditions lifecycle to move your real loan status to a rule-driven clearing. Task-based workflow and enhanced condition transforms the Encompass from a manual loan processing into a structured decision platform, creating the operational foundation for a AI-driven and agentic lending. I know I said a lot, but trust me, it sounds a bit complex, but it is if you plan it, if you bring in small chunks of innovation, small chunks of modernization, you will absolutely prepare your ecosystem to get to the next state of agentic lending. You can start small, you can start bringing in the features that are available in Encompass today and those capabilities without without disrupting your current operational processes, your current LOS, and everything that's happening. You still can run that in parallel, but we encourage you to start looking at the capabilities that are available today and how do you start small. At the end of the day, the outcome that truly matters to your business. What are the outcomes? Why should you even modernize, right? The key business outcomes that everyone is looking for today is how do you reduce the manual loan touches? How do you improve and faster loan cycle times? How do we improve your loan officers' productivity? How do we improve the morale of the people working in your ecosystem? How do we enhance the borrower experience, right? All of this plays directly into the efficiencies that you need to bring in from a cost perspective, from a loan throughput perspective, and also to build the competitiveness, because your competition is already probably thinking about the next wave of agentic features that they want to implement. They're already thinking about how do we get to the automation to a point where we can prepare our business to go to the next set of features and the next set of enhancements. So our competition is already thinking in that direction. So it's even more important for us to focus on the outcomes that matters to your business. And where do we start? We start with the capabilities that are available today within Encompass, and how do we build on top of that? How do we take your entire ecosystem to the next wave and set of enhancements? And transformation does not require massive system overhaul. Successful lenders are starting with targeted automation initiatives. What I mean by targeted automation initiative is you can break it down into two things you want to do this year. For all you know, you may say, well, this is the bandwidth I have, this is the time I have. I'm just going to look at standardizing the workflow using task based workflow. I'm going to bring in the enhanced condition. I'm just going to focus on these two. You may decide to do that. And then you may focus on automating your underwriting condition, and you may then focus on implementing your document classification. So you can have targeted initiative that will generate the value and create the momentum that you require for a broader operational transformation. Again, the theme today being, let's start small and scale fast, right? Let's not get overwhelmed by all the million things that we need to do. Let's start where your business wants to meet the value that you can deliver, and let's look at what the significant challenges are that's running in your environment and why your environments are difficult to automate. We should just focus on those areas and highlight the challenges that one is running into, whether it is rising operational cost, whether it is longer loan processing cycle times, or having difficulty scaling the operations, right? We work with all kinds of lenders. Some lenders do have the bandwidth to scale fast, some don't, and that is where you will have to figure out what are the components and capabilities that you want to bring in first in your roadmap for this year to sort of incrementally show value for your business. And most importantly, a lot of the environments that we all thrive on, because they are so heavily customized and because we have written so many business rules and we do not have structured data in these environments, automating becomes very difficult. So the foundation starts with modernizing the Encompass workflow, and that's exactly where ICE has invested heavily in the platform. And they have been reinforcing what's coming every quarter as a part of their roadmap. We get to hear them at this ICE Experience conference. We get to meet a lot of people who are heavily passionate and invested in the platform, and they are ultimately looking at providing the incremental value that your business and your loan officers require to work and thrive safely in the Encompass ecosystem. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Kaylee from ICE Mortgage to walk us through what she's hearing from the lenders today, what do they have in the roadmap, and to get us all excited about why we should go and start looking at some of the features and capability that Encompass offers today. So with that, Kaylee, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Perfect. Thank you. Hello, everyone. If we go to the next slide, I'm going to talk about 3 frameworks that are on the Encompass platform that I personally oversee, and that's the Enhanced Conditions framework, the Task framework, and the Workflow Engine. Now, if you did get a chance to attend Experience in any of the past 3 years, you would have heard a lot about all 3 of these frameworks, because we, as Sunita said, are heavily invested in using these frameworks as the pillars for driving modernization and efficiency for lenders. So from the enhanced conditions perspective, namely, whoops, oh yeah, sure. No, you're right. We can go in there. People can review that slide as they at their leisure, right? We're gonna distribute these slides. So enhanced conditions over standard conditions. I want to address this because I do feel that this is a really common question that we get from our customers on the Encompass platform is why? Why should I move from standard to enhanced conditions? And what I want to take a moment to acknowledge is that up until 2026, there hasn't been a ton of deviation or differentiation between the standard and the enhanced conditions frameworks. As you can see here, they have supported the same features with some positives on the enhanced conditions side for some of those features and some negatives. And then really the main differentiation has been that you can automate the enhanced conditions through the workflow engine. So it's a true asynchronous automation. And then we also introduced the capacity for certain service providers, as they send feedback to you about your loans, to surface that feedback in the enhanced conditions framework within the loan, so that your end users know that they need to address issues with your loan data. Now, what I think is really important here, if we're talking about starting small, is that in the current state that enhanced conditions framework is in, you are going to be disrupting your end users in the least amount of way possible, because these two frameworks from an end user experience are extremely similar. So if you're worried about change management, if you're worried about resistance in your employee base on taking in a new framework, right now is really the time to get moved over to enhanced conditions, because it is going to cause the least amount of disruption in your underwriters and your processors and those people who have to interact with conditions, because these are very similar frameworks right now. Now, if we look at what is coming for enhanced conditions, the current state of conditions management in both standard and enhanced conditions is simply not going to suffice as we move further and further into automation and the realm of AI. Data models matter to automation. And what we are going to be investing in the enhanced conditions framework is an expanded and improved data model. And with that is going to come new end user experience. It is going to have new features. So if you don't want to have to take on all of that change all in one sitting somewhere down the road, it's really beneficial for you to at least take on the change of getting onto the new framework now, when it's going to be the least amount of change to absorb for your org. And then you're already perfectly poised as we continue to expand on this data model and we continue to bring new features that you haven't even seen in standard conditions to date. If we move on to talking about our task framework, I, again, in full transparency, want to acknowledge that if you are doing loans right now, your organization is already using task-based workflow. You have been using the tools that have been available to you to accommodate that. It's either been pipeline views, loan pipeline views. Maybe you've used the dashboards in the desktop application. Maybe you're using emails. Maybe somebody has a checklist, printed checklist, or maybe you've been using an input form that has a checklist. So you're already doing task-based workflow. So we don't want you to feel like you are taking on some new methodology just by shifting the methodology to a new tool. So the task framework is really just a better tool for you to run that task-based workflow methodology within your pipeline. And what we did here, just for illustrative purposes, is to, again, acknowledge that there are all of these features that you need out of task-based workflow, because really what you're doing is you're project managing every loan in your pipeline, right? You have a start and you have an end and you have milestones in between and you have requirements that need to be met and you have activities that need to be performed in order to get that little mini project of that loan from start to finish on time. So during the course of that project management, we have provided support for most of them. Like we say, you can create lists of work needed with those tools that I previously talked about. You can, to some degree, identify statuses of work, but you have not been able to really identify the priority of the work in the legacy tools. You can do some communication of status updates. You can do some assignment of work to people within your organization and providing updates to management. It's all there, but it's not the most optimal experience, and you're not getting the most optimal data out of those tools. And then there's no support for identifying work that's at risk of missing deadlines. So then when we start to talk about the task framework, the beauty of the task framework is it introduces a data model that creates consistent output across every unit of work in your pipeline. So it'll create that list of work that's needed at a pipeline level. Every single unit of work has a status. Every single unit of work has an identity. You can communicate off of those status changes very clearly through the workflow engine. Every single unit of work has an assignee. We have reporting data, productivity data that is available right now via APIs and that we're working to get into our BI tool so that you can provide very clear updates to management. Every unit of work has a start date, has a due date. It's very easy to identify the work that's either past its deadline or approaching its deadline. And then moving on to the third framework that we want to talk about, which is our workflow engine. So our workflow engine is additive to our platform. It is not a replacement for business rules. The business rules versus the workflow engine, they have very succinct purposes. And so what we wanted to do here, because we frequently get this question, is the question of should I migrate all of my business rules to workflow rules? How do I know when to use a business rule versus a workflow rule? So this is just a very clear guide. If you start to pick up workflow rules and you have these questions, you can ask yourself these questions as you're working through a business problem. And it should be very easy for you to determine whether you should be using a business rule or a workflow rule, depending on your need. So there's a need to update the value of a field in a loan based off of activity in other fields in a loan. If you have a user in that loan and they need to be able to see that change immediately, you're going to use a business rule to do that. If the triggering field that you need to be working with is considered a virtual field, workflow rules have introduced support for that business rules never had. Where we have overlap in these two is that they both can listen to changes in standard or custom fields and then in turn take action on other fields. However, if that action is to run advanced code and perhaps declare variables and do more advanced evaluations, if-thens, you're still going to stick with your business rules for that. Then there are certain actions that the business rules will continue to support that workflow rules don't support, such as if you have a synchronous experience where an end user is in the loan and you need to evaluate the changes that they're making and then give them a modal for feedback, that would still be a business rule. If you need to update loan templates, if you need to trigger activity off of lock events or TPO events, you would still continue to use business rules. And then in workflow rules, if you have actions that pertain to scheduler or new scheduler service or events, and then if you have any actions or events that are around our task framework, and if you have any actions or events that are around our enhanced conditions, you would definitely be using the workflow rules for that. So to tie into what Sunita was saying, all three of these frameworks have a large amount of functionality and bring a lot of capability to the table. But as of 25.4, all three of them offer very, very small increments of change that you can embark on with very low risk, so that you don't have to feel overwhelmed either in your technical team or even in your end users at too much change too fast. We know with change, there's also a lot of production support. So don't know that the next slide necessarily goes into it, but every single one of these features you can very quickly and very easily go try in small increments in a very focused subset of your pipeline so that you don't have to feel overwhelmed with the change. All right, back to you, Sunita.
Thank you, Kaylee. Over to you, Shane. You're next in the segment.
Excellent. Thank you, Kaylee. Thank you, Sunita. And hello to all of our attendees today. So what I want to do in the next 15 minutes is kind of ground everything that we've covered in the reality of what lenders are actually dealing with today. So the configurations, the workflows, the operational habits that have built up over years, and walk through what the path to modernization looks like in practice. So I come at this as a developer. I spend most of my time in Encompass environments, reading configurations, tracing triggers, untangling customizations. So what I'm going to share, it isn't a vision, it's what we actually see when we open up a lender's environment and start assessing where they are. When we start an engagement with a lender, the first thing we do is an environment assessment. And across lenders of all sizes, from community banks to credit unions, even mid-size IMBs, the patterns are remarkably consistent. The typical environment we walk into has been in production for many years, 5, 7, sometimes 10 or more. And over that time, it's accumulated thousands of custom fields. I've worked in environments with over 3,000 active custom fields, and most of them were created to solve a specific problem at a specific point in time. It's just that nobody ever retired them. So attached to those fields, you'll sometimes find hundreds of field triggers. Many of those fire conditionally. You can have sequencing, and they interact with each other in ways that often aren't fully documented anywhere. The original developers who wrote them may not even work at the company anymore. So you end up in a situation where nobody fully understands why the system behaves the way it does in every scenario. You just know if you change something, you better test carefully because you don't know what else will break. On top of that, you typically have dozens of plugins doing things that Encompass can now handle natively, or at least could handle natively with a modern configuration. And then there's manual milestone manipulation, where processors and loan officers are physically moving loans through the pipeline because the system isn't driving the workflow, people are. So, what does this actually cost lenders? Well, there's a few things. First, you have operational drag. So every manual touch, every time a human has to move a loan or clear a condition by hand, maybe chase down a document status, that's time. And when you multiply that by loan volume, you start to see why cycle times are so difficult to compress, even when everyone's doing their best. And second, you can have inconsistency. When workflows depend on individual habits rather than system enforced processes, you get variability. So, processors, you can have two processors handle the same loan type differently. Two underwriters can have different interpretations of what conditions cleared means. And that inconsistency is difficult to manage and even harder to audit. Third, and this is the one that matters most for where the industry is going, these environments are simply not automatable. You cannot layer intelligent automation onto a system that fundamentally relies on human judgment to navigate its own workflow. There just isn't enough structure in the system to give automation anything to work with. So with all of that said, that's the starting point for almost every modernization engagement we run. So what does the path forward actually look like? Well, in practice, it follows a sequence, and it isn't a big bang transformation. It's a series of targeted steps that build on each other. Step one is rationalization. Before you can modernize, you need to understand what you have. We go through the custom fields, the triggers, the plugins systematically and ask, is this still needed? Is this solving a problem that Encompass now handles natively? Is this duplicated somewhere else? And the goal isn't to delete everything or start from scratch. It's to reduce the noise so you can clearly see what your actual operational logic is. In most environments, a significant portion of custom fields are either unused or redundant. Eliminating those reduces risk, it simplifies the data model, and it makes the next steps much cleaner to implement. Rationalization also surfaces something important. It forces lenders to document their actual business rules. Not the rules they think they have, but the rules actually encoded in the system. And that documentation becomes the foundation for everything that follows. Step 2 is leveraging enhanced conditions. As you all know, conditions are one of the most manually intensive parts of the mortgage workflow. In the traditional Encompass environment, conditions are often managed through a combination of custom fields, notes on the loan, and institutional knowledge about what each condition requires and when it can be cleared. Enhanced conditions bring structure to that process. Conditions are templated, so they're consistent across loans and across teams. They're linked to the loan data model, so you can track their statuses programmatically. And clearing logic can be automated. Rather than a processor manually marking a condition cleared after reviewing a document, the system can clear it when the appropriate document has been received and validated. The operational impact there is significant. Underwriting throughput improves because conditions are managed systematically rather than ad hoc. Audit trails become cleaner because the full condition lifecycle is captured in the system. And the experience for the loan officer and the borrower improves because condition status is visible, current, and reliable. Step 3 is implementing task-based workflow. So with a cleaner environment, task-based workflow gives you a structured mechanism to replace manual process management with automated task routing. What does that mean in practice? Well, instead of a processor deciding what needs to happen next and executing it manually, the system generates tasks based on the loan state and routes them to the right role automatically. The workflow is defined once, enforced consistently, and it doesn't vary based on who's working the loan that day. This matters for several reasons. Consistency improves because the system is enforcing the process, not individuals. Accountability improves because every task is tracked. You know when it was assigned, when it was completed, and by whom. And operational errors go down because people aren't navigating the workflow from memory or just the way we've always done it. From a developer perspective, task-based workflow also makes the loan pipeline legible. Instead of a tangle of triggers driving implicit state changes, you have explicit tasks with defined owners and defined completion criteria. And that is the system you can reason about, audit, and improve incrementally, which is a meaningful shift from what most lenders are managing today. Step 4 is preparing for Encompass on the web. Now, Encompass on the web is not just a UI change, it's an architectural shift. Moving to Encompass on the web means moving toward a more API native Encompass, which opens up a category of integrations and automation that are significantly harder to achieve in the legacy desktop environment. Getting there usually means completing the earlier rationalization work first, because Encompass on the web, it surfaces gaps in configurations that the desktop client was more forgiving about. But lenders who make that transition find that integrations are cleaner, performance is better, and the surface area for connecting external tools is much larger. So when lenders go through the sequence, rationalize, leverage enhanced conditions, implement task-based workflow, and ultimately move toward Encompass on the web, the outcomes are consistent. Loan cycle times drop by 1 to 2 days on average. And that's not a projection, that's what we observe in post-implementation reviews. Manual effort across the loan lifecycle drops by 25 to 40%. That includes processor touches, condition management time, and milestone management. Underwriting throughput improves because underwriters are spending more time making actual credit decisions and less time managing the logistics of conditions and documents. And most importantly, for where the industry is heading, lenders have built a foundation that can actually support automation and AI. Now, I want to spend just a moment on why that last point matters, because it connects to what Kayla covered and to what Sunita is going to walk through next. When lenders tell us they want to apply AI to their lending operations for document analysis, income calculation, even underwriting prep, the first question we have to ask is, does your Encompass environment give AI anything to work with? You see, AI can analyze a document, but if the conditions it needs to satisfy aren't structured, if they're not machine readable, not tied to the loan data model, not tracked in a system in a way the system understands, then the AI can produce an output, but a human still has to take that output and act on it manually. You've essentially added a smart recommendation layer on top of a manual process. So the manual process is still there. Task-based workflow and enhanced conditions, they can change that equation. When workflows are structured and conditions are machine readable, an AI agent can do more than analyze. It can act. It can clear a condition, advance a workflow step, flag an exception for human review. The loan moves forward without human intervention unless something actually requires human judgment. And that's the shift from AI as a recommendation engine to AI as an execution engine. And it only works when the operational foundation is in place. So the modernization work, the rationalization, the enhanced conditions, task-based workflow adoption, this isn't preparatory work before the real AI work starts. It's the prerequisite for getting real, measurable value out of AI and lending operations. With that, I'll hand it back to Sunita to talk about what that AI-ready state looks like in practice and where it takes lenders next.
Thank you, Shane. It's a perfect segue into what I want to highlight next, which is without task-based workflow and enhanced condition, AI becomes a recommendation engine. With task-based workflow and enhanced condition, AI becomes an execution engine. So it's so important in order for us to be AI-ready lending, the operational foundational pieces have to be in place. Once the foundational pieces are in place, we can begin adopting the AI-driven capabilities. What are some of the emerging AI application in the mortgage lending that we get to hear from our customers and lenders over and over again? As you know, we work with credit unions, we work with banks, we work with mortgage companies, we talk to so many people in the lending industry. And what we hear, an emerging theme is automating your document analysis, having an automated document analysis, underwriting preparation and validation, how we can become a touchless underwriting engine, intelligent borrower engagement, what that looks like, and predictive loan risk insights. The future of lending is moving towards an exception based processing where AI handles all the routine tasks and the human focuses on the complex scenario. Humans are always in the loop, but the future of lending will be towards moving to an exception based processing and lending. And that is for in order for us to get there, the foundational pieces that Kaylee talked about, that Shane reinforced, are absolutely critical. So if you think about automated document analysis, I'm going to throw some nuggets out there in terms of what we are hearing in the industry. When you think about automated document analysis in mortgage lending, it means leveraging AI to automatically read, understand, classify, extract documents, extract data from borrower documents instead of the processor reviewing them manually. That is the highlight of automating your entire doc analysis. That can be achieved through AI as a technology, provided we have all the foundational pieces in place and can get rid of the traditional process that you have today, which is where a processor goes in, manually reviews the borrower document, reads the pay stub, calculates the income, enters the information in the loan system, checks the missing pages. Just imagine the process time consuming it is, and also the human errors that it can be prone to, right? So in AI lending, we can absolutely leverage AI to automate a lot of that process. Before AI, it is heavily reliant on processor, and after automating your doc analysis, AI can automatically analyze your document, extract and populate the required data fields, detect missing and incomplete files, and faster document validation and workflow progression. This is not just theory, it is doable. We have clients who are embarking on this journey. But again, the reinforcement here is that the foundational pieces needs to exist before we get there. Similarly, underwriting preparation and validation in AI ready lending means using AI and automation to prepare your loan files for underwriting, verifying that all required data, documents, conditions are complete and accurate before an underwriter reviews the loan. So imagine the power of automation in that space, how we can organize and validate loan data automatically, enable extract and validating income data, and detecting the inconsistency, whereas the underwriters can focus on the risk decisioning. Today, underwriters spend a great deal of time preparing the files, and we can move your underwriters to focus more on detecting the risks, solving those, and kind of providing value back there, right? So we can get rid of a lot of the manual processes in the process. So that's one of the other use cases. And another use case we can talk about is how you can leverage AI to transform the borrower engagement from a reactive communication to a proactive automated guidance throughout the loan journey. This can be easily achieved by bringing in AI into the mix, where you can see the real time updates when a loan milestone changes without manual follow ups. When a borrower stays informed, we can detect the missing incomplete documents. We can provide 24 by 7 borrower assistant, and loan officer can focus on high value borrower relationship, whereas AI can handle the routine communication and status. This is again achievable, doable. A lot of people are embarking on this journey. How do we transform the borrower engagement from a reactive communication to a proactive communication? Last but not the least, predictive loan risk insights. We can have evaluate multiple factors like borrower income stability, credit behaviors, debt to income patterns, property valuation risk. We can bring in all the potential risk. We can automate and flag all the potential risk very early on in the process. And the impact is quite powerful, right? You will see fewer surprises during underwriting, improved quality, stronger confidence, and issues are resolved much early in the workflow. And these four use cases that I'm talking about is the most talked about in the industry today on what it really means when you think about AI lending. And this is not just in theory. All of this is doable. But the reinforcement here is let's get the capabilities that exist in Encompass, the foundational pieces that exist in Encompass up and running, then build on top of a very sanitized Encompass environment that can be leveraged to bring in the digital AI lending platform for your users of your system. It's absolutely doable, but we need to start small, scale big. That's again our theme here today. I want to consistently stay true to the theme. It is about getting the foundational pieces, dreaming big, having that vision of moving to a AI driven digital lending platform, and how we can achieve this collectively, you know, operating in a safe and sound environment. That is very, very important. I get asked this question all the time, right? How can we create the AI platform in a very, very safe and sound and secure manner? How do we bring in all the impactful governance that is required by the Fair Lending Act? How do we monitor risk? How do we bring in the AI governance, make it more readable, more measurable, and more auditable? And so it is very important as you think about the AI journey for ensuring that the governance is always in place before even you get started, involving your compliance team and making sure you are operating in a safe and sound manner, given we are a highly regulated industry, is absolutely critical. And there are so many ways of achieving measurable metrics in an AI governed platform once you have all the foundational pieces that are required to kind of move there. So the Encompass value pyramid is very simple. Your foundation is moving from the legacy to a modern Encompass. The accelerator will be the task-based workflow, eventually DDA, enhanced condition, and the future will be the AI-driven lending, which brings in all the predictive analytics that you require, and eventually moving to a touchless underwriting world and governing in a safe and sound and secure manner. And it is absolutely doable. So that's what I wanted to cover today. And Neha, I would love to open it up for any Q&A and questions our audience has for us. Thank you. All right, let's see what questions do we have in the chat. Okay.
Looks like
All right. The first question is for you, Shane. Yeah, here you mentioned environments with 3,000 custom field. When a lender first sees the assessment, what's usually their reaction? What do you tell them? Where to start without feeling overwhelmed?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, full transparency, the immediate reaction usually is to feel overwhelmed. That's a lot of custom fields. But there is something that, I see consistently, which is grouping in those custom fields. So, of course, you have lots of one-offs. If you have a lender, who's been on Encompass for 5, 7, 10 years, you're going to have a lot of one-off kind of custom fields that were created, again, at a specific time for a specific use case. But you'll also have where there are 25 fields that were created for a specific custom input form, or there are a handful of fields that were created for a custom print form that perhaps was needed at one time but is no longer in use. So it's really looking at the workflow, looking at the use cases, and then tracing those custom fields back to the workflow and seeing if there are things that are no longer in use, then potentially you're eliminating whole groups, whole categories of custom fields at a time, 20, 50 at a time. So it's, the initial number, sure, can be a little overwhelming, but when you go at it that way, it's really entirely manageable.
Okay, there was one other question here, Shane. Maybe you or Kaylee can take this. This is a question from Lynn. Our e-folder documentation today is very detailed, and we are having an internal discussion about revamping. As we learn more about enhanced condition linking to borrower, it sounds like documents need to be specific to an individual borrower in order to be accurately tied to an enhanced condition. Am I interrupting this correctly?
I can take that.
Yes.
So right now we know that the folders in eFolder can only be linked to a borrower pair. And you can link multiple folders to a condition. You can link multiple conditions to a folder. So I'm not entirely sure the details of how detailed your indexing is of your attachments to your folders. But you could, in theory, have multiple conditions, one, say, for each borrower that's W-2 employed on your loan, for getting pay stubs. You could, in theory, take each of those, link them to the very specific borrower and employment record that the condition pertains to, but then you could link all of those conditions to a single pay stubs folder, for instance, and you could just have all of your pay stubs in that folder. Now, obviously, then you are still leaving it up to a person to understand which documents in that folder do pertain to which condition. So if you wanted to get very granular in the folder structure right now, you would want to do individual pay stub folders to link to each condition. And then the assumption would be that the document that's in that pay stub folder also pertains to that very specific borrower and employment record. I didn't talk about it here. You will be hearing more about this as time goes on, but we are, in fact, working on a new data model now that will allow you to link individual attachments to the loan object, so to borrowers or employment records. And as we move into that data model, which folder you put documents in is going to be a little less important because you are going to be able to link specific attachments to conditions and to parts of the loan object. Hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you, Kelly. I'm going to move on to the second question. This is from Chris. I have been working on building enhanced condition automation. You mentioned documentation. Is there a way for you to create a readable workflow rules document that will have all the rules in a readable format?
And when you say readable format, what
It says
you
you
have
have all
all
the
the HTML and
HTML,
XML that can be
XML. Yeah.
formatted in one document web page that can be the reference. You can have all the HTML and XML that could be formatted. I will have to take that offline and think through that, Chris. I don't know if maybe Sunita, somebody on your team can
Sure.
get me connected with Chris.
We can absolutely do that. That's not a problem.
So meaning extracting your current configuration and then having that in layman's terms tell your ops manager what it's doing. Is that what you're looking
What
for,
to look
Chris?
at. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, it's an interesting concept. I'll have to think through that.
Okay. Good question, Chris. We will
Yes, thank you.
absolutely work with Kelly to get this answered. Okay. Any other questions? Let's see. All right, here is the next question. Does ICE Encompass allow AI-powered agents to access or Encompass on behalf of lenders? Is there a published approved vendor list?
I would not be the product person to answer that question for you, Lynn. I would recommend that you reach out to your account manager to ask that question.
Okay. And Lynn, we are taking notes of it. We
Mm-hmm.
absolutely will sort this with either your account executive directly, or we'll also reach out to our contacts and see if we can get this answered. Because it's not a yes or no answer. It also depends upon your ecosystem, what exactly you're looking for. So we'll have to absolutely get this answered correctly for you.
Hmm.
Okay. Next question from Chris again. What about copying workflow rules to be able to make small adjustments to a copied rule instead of starting everyone from scratch?
Yeah, the workflow rules configuration UI does have a duplicate option. It's in the ellipsis menu that's at the end of every row in the list where you can create a copy.
Okay. Great questions. Keep it coming. Any other questions? Anybody else? I don't see any open questions at this time.
I think we have a few still in the chat, Sunita. There was a
Okay,
question
let's go ahead.
about for lenders that are still on standard conditions, sort of the best practices path forward for that transition.
Like, what's a good first step?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've been on a little bit of a journey at ICE on what we would propose as best practices. A couple of years ago, it was, you really should be as you're moving from standard conditions to enhanced conditions, you should be evaluating if there is any opportunity within your standard conditions to extract some of those items and convert them into tasks.
Mm-hmm.
We've backed off from that a little bit. So if that was the last messaging that you heard from us, I want to let you know that we've been evolving how we're seeing this as well. So there is I think the simplest thing for you to do is there is a tool that is native in the settings that will allow you to start converting your standard condition templates into enhanced conditions templates. There is no harm in you doing that. You can convert as many or as little as you want. And then just set up a single condition type. So enhanced conditions, that's a very big difference between the standard framework and the enhanced framework is you can define types of conditions, and those types will control what the prior two options are. They will control which people in your org can manage with which statuses on the condition. It gives you a lot of granular control over conditions that standard conditions didn't give you. But I would just go set up a single type. I would convert a few of your standard conditions into enhanced conditions. And then with our 25.4 functionality that allows you to go set a single loan to use the enhanced conditions framework, you can very easily start to add conditions to the loan, a test loan, and get a feel for what these new features that enhanced conditions offer really, how they really surface in the loan. And just pick it up and start playing with it, because we've taken all the risk out of it. And then as you get comfortable with how the loan, then you can flesh out your design of types and where you want your existing conditions to go into those types. And I think you'll find that it'll just snowball from there. You'll be able to really pick up momentum from there.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thank
That was great.
Thank you, Kelly. A quick time check. We have 4 minutes. We are going to take a couple more questions that are in the chat here. For me, some lenders in the audience may have attempted an Encompass cleanup before and stalled out. What's different about the approach you're describing? What typically causes those earlier efforts to lose momentum? So, yeah, this is, if you're experiencing this, you're not alone. We have talked to many lenders who go through this exercise. The reason being they try to solve for too much upfront. And what I have learned in terms of speaking with, based on my experience, is we need to start small. We need to start small. We need to have very small epics that will help you get to your ultimate goal. So the difference in the approach I would leverage to start with the capabilities that are available in Encompass today. I will start small. I will reach out to the experts who have done this. When you are stuck and you need, more kind of insights, I would approach people with that expertise and who have done this. I would not try to solve everything by myself. The approach that I'm describing here is put together an epic which is small but impactful. Start there, and as you start to achieve those small epics and objectives, you will start looking at the bigger picture, and you will continue to keep the momentum when you start showing quick wins. And the quick wins are important, and don't try to do the quick wins all by yourself. I would say talk to your tribe, talk to people who have done it, talk to ICE, talk to your account manager at ICE, and tell them what you are trying to achieve. Because what I have realized is the support does exist. We just need to know whom to reach out to. So I would start with a good health check on your Encompass before you get started. Identify what your vision is for each quarter, and then start at that point and start creating small epic and vision board for your business and for your technology team to get there. And typically what causes to lose momentum is not having clarity on what you want to achieve. If you're trying to do too much too soon, you are absolutely going to lose the momentum. So start small and scale big. And then, Kelly, I do have a question for you as well. What's your recommended path for lenders who are still on standard conditions? Where should they start?
No, sorry, Sunita, we covered that. You had stepped away just for a moment.
We covered that one.
Oh, sorry, my bad. My apologies there.
No worries.
All right. I don't know what happened here. My apologies. All right. The next question I have is, modernization projects have a reputation for going long and over budget. How do you make the case to the CTO and CFO that a targeted approach actually de-risks the transformation rather than delaying the hard work? Yeah, this is a good one, right? Projects definitely go long and over budget. We've seen this over and over again. It's very important when you are presenting to your CTO and CFOs to highlight the lessons learned. You might have started something and you might have failed, but the idea is start somewhere and fail fast. If you fail fast, there is nothing wrong with it. But what is important is to learn from those failures, like what went wrong when you started or embarked on the modernization project. And be bold and be direct in terms of communicating that to your CTO and CFO, saying, this is what happened, lesson learned, here are the changes that we are bringing in, here is how we are going to manage the risk. and then say why it's absolutely critical not to delay the momentum that you have already started and the work that you have already started. Instead, you are coming back with gusto and a lot more clarity based on some of the failures you experienced initially when you started the project. So, in my experience, and when I ran large PMOs at Fannie Mae, one of the biggest thing that I have learned is to talk about your failures. It's okay to start and fail, but what's not okay is not to start, right? You can start, you can fail, but be transparent, make that case to your CTO. And I'm sure leadership always appreciates direct speech and being very transparent in terms of your success and failures. And lay down the game plan. Go back with a plan and don't give up on your strategy and vision to modernize and to move further and to start small and to scale big. Thank you, everyone. Top of the hour. I can talk on this topic forever, but I definitely want to end on time. Appreciate you all taking your time and joining us today. We will be in touch. We have your email IDs. You have us. You know who we are. Feel free to reach out to us. And definitely a couple of questions. We will answer them through email. So thank you, everyone, for joining. Truly appreciate your time. Thank you and have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kaylee, for joining us as well.